I'm about to start knitting the button band for the Champagne Cardigan, so I thought I'd do some tutorials of just the process as I go about knitting it. So I need to pick up the stitches, and I need to pick up one stitch for every row along the complete edge of the cardigan, as it's all done in one section. So here I'm just on the right side of the front, and because it was knit top down, this is the way that my stitches were worked. And so I've got a knit stitch here, a purl stitch in here, and then there's a knit stitch on the end that's curling. So what I want to do is pick up along right in here along the edge. So as I go down, I want to make sure that I go down as far as I possibly can. So when you think you've gone down as far as you can, there's usually one further that you can go. So that looks pretty far down just there, but I can actually go one further, and that will help the button band not sort of sit up a little bit. So not in there, but actually one further all the way down here, and that's where I'll start. And I've got my yarn ready to go. So picking up and knitting, making sure I get both strands through. Just picking up along, making sure I pick the same line, one for every row. And this is a much smaller needle than you use to knit. So this, I'm using a 3mm needle, and I used a 4mm needle for the body of the cardigan. Alright, so I'm going to pick that up all the way around, and then I have to do some preparing for the buttonholes before I begin knitting. So I'm almost finished picking up the stitches. I'll just get the last few. And then I want to get one more right at the very bottom. That will be a little bit tricky to get through. I might need a crochet hook. But I want to get this very last one. There we go. It's going to be tricky to get around. I may need a crochet hook. Nope, I managed to get it. There we go. Got the very last one, because that will just help in terms of so it doesn't dip down. So then I'll be ready. Now before I get started, I need to actually mark for where the buttonholes are going to be on the right side. So I'm going to go back to the pattern and have a read about marking the 4 buttonholes. I've also been instructed to cut the yarn here, because we actually start, so this is on the left front, we actually go back and start on the right front and start working up this way, but before, so this is the right front, but before I start knitting at all, I will definitely check the pattern, because I do need to make sure, like, you actually do the buttonholes as you're knitting, and there's like a whole process in the pattern about doing that, so I want to make sure I'm prepared before I get started. So I read through the pattern instructions, and this is my marker where I finished my last increase for the V-neck, and I had 70, from that point I had 74 picked up stitches, and I needed to place a marker 5 stitches from the bottom, and then another marker about 1 centimetre below that, so that was about 3 stitches below that. So this marker here is at 71 stitches, this marker here is at 5 stitches, and then I needed to place markers for the 2 other buttonholes, because there's 4 buttons, so 4 buttonholes for 4 buttons on this side. So I had 5 stitches here, which was the pattern instructions. I marked 1 centimetre down, so this is from this marker to this marker I had 66 stitches, and I needed to have these 2 evenly placed. So that creates 3 sections, so 66 divided by 3 is 22, so I placed another marker 22 stitches above here, and then another one 22 stitches above here, and these are the bottom sections of the bottom part of the buttonhole. So they're now all evenly spaced, and this one should finish at the top where the last increase was made as I work down for the V-neck. So I have the work with the right front, and I've got the wrong side facing, and then I have some yarn with the tail here, and the tail's going to be towards me and the ball of yarn back here. And I need a bit of a tail, but not a very long one, because I'm only going to cast on, I've decided I'm going to cast on 11 instead of 15, but even still you don't need a very long tail. So I'm going to hold it kind of similar to a like a long tail cast on, where you put your hand like in a C shape and then grab the yarn, and then I'm going to put the needle on top and just twist so that I go sort of under the yarn from the finger, and the yarn is going like this way over to the ball, right? So the tail is here. So you want to make sure you go that way, not that way. So see here, I've got the twist going the wrong way. I want to go that way. Right, so now that actually is like my first cast on stitch, and it presents a little bit like a pearl. Then I'm going to have to cast on, for me, 10 more stitches, and it will go knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, etc., finishing with a pearl. So this is the Italian cast on. So I'm going to start casting on the stitches, and as I do that I'm going to refer to this one here as the low yarn and this one here is the high yarn. The low yarn is the tail. So I've got my needle here and my one stitch cast on that looks like a pearl, and so I've got to hold my finger on it. So I need to cast on what looks like a knit. So I'm going to go towards me under the low, through the center, over the high, and then under both, and that's a knit stitch there. That looks like a knit stitch. Now this will, if you don't put your finger on it, it's going to just go all over the place. So I've got a purl and a knit. Now I need to put on a purl. So I'm going to go over the high and under both, and then down through the center and under the high, and then that looks like a purl stitch. So I've got 3 now. And see how it's wanting to flip around, so just make sure you keep your finger on that. You can readjust your left hand, but you just want to keep your right hand on those 3 so they don't, disappear anywhere. So now I've got to do repeat and do a knit. So, and I'm only doing 11, the pattern says 15, but I'm only doing 11. So I need to go under the low and up through the center, over the high, and then down under both. And then that's my knit. Now I need to do a purl over the high and under both, down through the center and under the high. Oops, and have it look like a purl. So you can let go of this yarn, but you just make sure you've got your right, this finger keeps it snug. So I've got 5 at the moment. So I'll speed up a little bit. You can always go back to see the earlier ones, but I just did a purl. I can see it's a purl because I've got that yarn coming across here. So for a knit, it's under, through the center, over and under both, and that's a knit. And then a purl is over the top, under both, down through the center, under the high. So we've got 2, 4, 6, 7, I want 11, under, up, over, through, over both. Now I've got 9, under, up, over, under both, that's my knit, and now my purl, over the top, under both, down through the center, under the top, and that is my 11, but I'm really going to hang on to this and try and not have it go anywhere and turn my work. So that last one was a purl on this side, which presents as a knit on this side. And what I need to do now is grab a double pointed needle, or I'm using this short 40 centimeter needle, And whenever I see something that looks like a knit, I'm going to knit it, and when it's going to be a purl, I'll slip it with the yarn in front. So I'm going to knit that one, and then slip with the yarn in front, knit, slip with the yarn in front. I already did this earlier in the video when I had more stitches. Oopsie. It went over, but I didn't knit it. So knit, slip with the yarn in front, all the same that I did last time, but with fewer stitches because I just didn't like how wide that button band was. Slip, knit, and that will also save me a little bit of yarn. Slip, and then this last one, make sure I don't lose it, push it up to here, and I'm going to knit these two, this one plus the first one, knit those two through the back loop. If I can get it. What have I just done there? Something looked weird there. Oh no, that's fine, just got to knit those two through the back loop. I'm trying to grab the next one as well. There we go. Oh, I feel like I've grabbed some of that. I've grabbed that guy's mohair. Got to be a little bit careful when you've got two strands of yarn, not to steal the wrong part of a stitch. And then now I'll turn and do the same thing. Slip with all the pearls with yarn in front, and then just get those tails out of the way. Knit, slip with yarn in front, knit, slip with yarn in front, knit, slip with yarn in front, knit. I'm going to have to pull that a little bit, just make sure that doesn't run away. Slip with, where was I up to? Slip with yarn in front, knit, slip with yarn in front. And I'm going to keep doing that, and when I get to this stitch here, consume one each time, and then I'll come back when I get to the buttonhole rows. So I've been working away at the button band of my Champagne cardigan, and I've done 3 buttonholes, and I'm just about to make my last buttonhole. So because my button band is narrower, I'll be getting to the point where I make the buttonhole a little earlier. So the pattern says to have 15 stitches for your button band, and I'm only using 11 stitches. So as a result, halfway for me, or where I need to create the buttonhole, is I need to work 6 stitches instead of 8. So the pattern would say 8, but because mine is narrow, I'm only going to work 6. So to place my last buttonhole here, the way that, I'll just show you here, the way the buttonholes are worked is when you get to the bottom of them, you actually work just these stitches back and forth, and then you have to cut the yarn, and then you join new yarn and work this side, including attaching it to the needle, and then you start working the whole section. So when I say work, it means I'm following the pattern, which is to knit all the knits, for double knitting, knit all the knits and slip the pearls. So I'm going to knit, slip, knit, slip, knit, slip, and that's my 6, but if you were following the pattern with a full 15 stitches, you'd have to do 2 more stitches, knit and slip again for 8, and then I'll turn my work. So that's 1, and then I need to do the same thing again, going back, knit, slip, knit, slip, knit, slip. So that's 2 rows, and I need to do that a total of 9 times. The pattern gives you an option of how deep you want these buttonholes to be, depending on how you know, how large your buttons are. And for me, it suggests either a total here of 9 rows or 11. And so I've chosen the smaller option of 9 because obviously I've got a slightly narrower button band, so I'm sure I'll have slightly smaller buttons anyway. So for me, I'm only going to get to 9. So I've done 2, and I'll do a third one, and see, I don't want to purl that, I just want to slip it, knit, slip, knit, slip. All right, so that was row 3. Now I'm doing row 4, and I'll just I'll meet you when I'm back at 9. Now I'm actually about to start my 7th row, but I thought I might just show you, because you might find you lose track and you're like, oh gosh, how many have I done? Have I done 6? Have I done 8? So at the moment I know I've done 6, but I'll show you how I can tell for sure. You can see the gap here. What I want to do is look at where these rows line up. And so these stitches is one row, this is another row, this is another row. So that there joins up with that stitch, and there are 1, 2, 3 knits on top of that. And because you only knit every other row, that's 2, 4, 6 rows. So I hope that's clear. So you're following a full line, a full line, a full line, a full line, and so that actually dips down there. So that one matches up with that one, and I've got 1, 2, 3 knits on top of it, which means I've done 6 rows. So I'm actually only up to row 7, so I've got to go 7, 8, and then 9, and then that's when I'll cut my yarn. So I've just got to do row 9 now. Well, you know, my sort of short row 9 on only these 6 stitches. And then I have to cut my yarn, and I don't need a very long tail, I just need enough that I'm going to weave it in later. And then I will start knitting on the balance of the stitches. You can see I've only got, so that was 6, I've only got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that 5th one will get knit with this one here. And I've got to do the same thing again. I need to knit 9 rows. Just leaving a little bit of a tail, just enough to weave in at the end. So knit, slip, got to be careful I don't grab the mohair for the next stitch, knit, slip, knit those 2 through the back loop, turn my work, and I'm only going to work those 5. So this is row 2. So I'm working up the other side. Just didn't catch the mohair. Slip, turn again. Now I've got to be careful because that's quite loose, because that's where the new yarn was joined. You can always tighten it up later, but I'll just pull it down a little bit. Knit, slip, see how loose that is, just pull it down now. Knit, slip, don't forget you've got to knit that with the one on the, joining it to the needle, the one on the needle. So that's 3, this is 4, I'll meet you back when I get to 9. So I'm up to my 9th row now. And in that one I will join with the yarn, with the stitch that's on the needles, just like all the others. You can see that marker there, that marker is from where my last increase was. So that's where the top of the buttonhole was meant to be. And then now I'm going to work across all the way to the end and join for the top of the buttonhole, just like I did here. And then I'll have to come in and weave in those ends after. So we'll be just as normal, slip, knit, slip, knit, slip, but then I'm going to start working these ones here. knit, slip, knit, slip, knit, slip. So that has joined the top of my buttonhole here. And then, because that's my last buttonhole, I'm ready to continue all the way around all 300 and something stitches. So it'll be a while. So I'm just going to sew in these ends, and because this is double knitted fabric, you can actually move the yarn, or put the yarn on a tapestry needle and push it in between the two layers of fabric so that you can't see it over to the side. And then I think in the Petite Knit video she does like a knot here, and I just don't like doing knots in my knitting, so I'm not pulling this too tight because I don't want to distort, so I'm just pulling it across, and then I'm going to weave it, or rather sort of pierce the yarn and go down that pickup line, and then I like to go back a couple of, just back in the other direction. You can see I'm not pulling it, like I'm not yanking it, there's actually a little bit of slack there. And then I'll snip it about here, and then when I block it, after I finish blocking it, then I'll cut it closer, and then that way you can't see anything on that side. So yeah, I don't do a knot or anything, I just go down and then up again, and so I'll just do that on the rest of them. So here is the finished button band with the buttons sewn on, and try and do this one-handed. Yeah, so that comes all the way, the button band comes all the way down, and it doesn't dip up by making sure that you go all the way to the very bottom and catch that last stitch. And yeah, that's the button band for the Champagne cardigan.